Hi everyone, thanks for checking out this video. So this is going to be a bit of a career advice video. As some of you might know, I recently finished my PhD, and I recently got a new job. So I was in the job market recently. So I was thinking this would be a good time to make a video about different career paths and kind of giving you guys some advice on the current state of the job market for bioinformatics and computational biology, because I was recently navigating it myself, looking for a job. So I think I can, use this video to tell you guys a bit about my experience and some advice, and then also say if anyone has any questions, please let me know in the comments, and I'll try to answer any questions you guys have if there's anything in particular that you want to know about. Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple different possible career paths that you might end up going down if you want to have a career in bioinformatics and computational biology. So these could be paths. These could be paths that you pursue upon completing a PhD, or maybe after completing a master's, or maybe even after just undergrad, or maybe even you're just a really skilled programmer and you don't even go to undergrad. But I'm going to try to note with each of these any degree requirements. Some of these actually require a PhD, so I'll try to note that when that's the case. But yeah, this could also be a useful video for someone who just finished a bachelor's in computer science, for example, and is thinking about getting into to bioinformatics. But yeah, I'm going to go through each of these and talk about kind of what I think about them and what I noticed about them when I was looking for a job last year. Okay, so I'll start with academia. Usually when people are thinking about a career in the sciences, they talk about academia versus industry. So I'll try to talk a bit about that here. And there's a couple different jobs in academia that you could pursue. And so I'm gonna mention a couple different positions that you might be applying for at a university. So the first one is adjunct professor. So throughout this video, I'm going to be telling you guys a lot that there's no right or wrong choices, and it's all about whatever is the best thing for you. But there's one exception where I'm going to tell you that there is a wrong choice that's a bad idea, and that's becoming an adjunct professor. So I'm actually just going to put a big no right here instead of even saying anything more. I'm just going to say that, yeah, this is the only position I'm going to say in this whole video that I advise against doing, and I just think is not that good of an idea. Yeah, so the thing with adjunct professors is you teach classes, but you're treated a lot worse than a tenured professor in terms of pay and benefits and stuff. Yeah, so it's pretty difficult to make a living off of being an adjunct professor. Usually if you're going to be an adjunct and try to actually really make a living to support yourself, you're going to need more than one position. So you hear about people having 3 different adjunct positions at different universities, and they'll be going around to teach different classes at different universities throughout the week or something. Because yeah, they don't really pay that much. You don't really get that good benefits. Yeah, so this is going to be the only job that I'm going to mention in this video that I'm just going to advise against doing. Although I will say the one exception is if you have free time and you're looking for a side job to do for fun. So I'll say well, maybe as a side job for fun. If you don't have to do it to financially support yourself, but let's say you have a 9-to-5 full-time job and you just enjoy teaching. And this is something I actually have thought about doing. I have thought about possibly if I have more time in the future, getting an adjunct position, teaching a night class for fun or something. Yeah, to do it for fun if you enjoy teaching, that's one thing. But I would advise against trying to be an adjunct professor to support yourself financially. I think that would be very, very difficult because it just doesn't pay a lot, and you have to get a couple different adjunct positions to be able to swing it. Yeah. Also, the contracts are temporary, so you have to constantly be hunting for new jobs. Um, yeah, there's a ton of bad things I could say about it. I would just leave it at that. I mean, and just continue on. Yeah, I mean, I would just advise not to try to become an adjunct professor, unless you're doing it for fun, like in addition to like a regular full time job. Okay, so sorry to kind of start off on like a negative note like that. Yeah, so now we're going to be getting into some more viable career options. So the next option I'm going to talk about is tenure track professor. For a lot of people, this is really the dream. This is really like to be a tenured professor after you get tenure. That's really like the life of a true scholar. You basically just spend your entire career kind of pursuing your own curiosities and like working on whatever research you want to work on. So for a lot of people, this is really the dream in academia and like the reason why they're doing a PhD. So yeah, before I get into any downsides, I'll just put like I'll put great life after getting tenure. Yeah, after you get tenure, I think it's a really good life. You're really living the life of like a true scientist, a true scholar, just like doing cool research that you want to work on and kind of being the boss of your own lab, mentoring grad students. So yeah, all of that does sound pretty good. The downside though is that it's like extremely competitive. First of all, to even get hired for a tenure track position, and then secondly, it's also extremely competitive. Even after you get hired for a tenure track position, you then have to compete for tenure. So I'll just put like this kind of the caveat to it. Um, Lots of pressure and competition before then. So this is what made me not want to go down this career path. Even though I kind of I really do enjoy teaching. I mean, you guys see me like making these videos and stuff. I'm just making these for fun, just because I enjoy making them. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy teaching in person too, whenever I get the chance to. Um, so it would be cool, but the big turnoff for me was this the extreme amount of like pressure and competition that you have to go through like before getting tenure, and that can be like years. You know what I mean? Even after you get the job, and even getting a tenure track position in the first place is very competitive. Like dozens or even like more than 100 people applying for one position. Extremely competitive, and then yeah, like I said, even after you get hired for a tenure track position, you then have to compete basically just to keep your own job and actually get tenure. So it's like even after you get a job, it's just like years and years more of this like high pressure, like extreme competition. And after finishing the PhD, like I was pretty tired of like the high pressure work. You know what I mean? So I wanted to just relax a bit and just be able to settle into a position and just not have to worry about that high pressure anymore. I'll also say one other thing. And yeah, this was another thing that was a turnoff for me. But I would say also like competition involves other factors besides quality of science. So yeah, I don't want to make this video into like a big rant about crazy things that I've been seeing happening in academia recently. Yeah, I don't want this to turn into just like a big rant or something, but I'll just leave it at this and say that like when these search committees are like hiring for these tenure track positions, and when you're competing to eventually get tenure, they don't only look at like the quality of the scientific research that you're doing. They look at other things too, like besides the quality of your work. I'll just yeah, I don't want to get into any like big rants or anything, but I'll just say yeah, that you get evaluated on other things that are not necessarily related to the quality of the scientific work that you're doing. And yeah, I'll leave it at that and not get into a rant about it. But yeah, but I'll just end by saying that just because like the tenure track path wasn't for me, I'm not trying to say that it's a bad path for everyone. Like the adjunct option, I'll say that this is like a bad path to go down. The tenure track path, yeah, for other people, I mean, it wasn't right for me, but for other people, this might be the right path. I'll say it helps too if you're willing to take a job like anywhere in the country or like anywhere in the world. Um, for me, like my wife and I didn't want to move far away from our family, so we were only looking around a certain geographic region, and I was not willing to like move far away for a job. But I think it would help. It would help to get a job if you're willing to like to move to like a different part of the country or a different part of the world for it. I think that would help with the competition a little bit. The other option in academia is oops, doing a postdoc. So if anyone doesn't know what this is, a postdoc is like after you've completed a PhD, this is like kind of a temporary position that works as like a stepping stone to this like tenure track position. So a lot of times, yeah, to get a tenure track position because of how competitive it is, it can be pretty difficult to get that kind of job like right after completing a PhD. So a lot of people who want to go down that path will do a postdoc first, or maybe even like more than one postdoc. And doing a postdoc, you kind of do similar work to a PhD. You continue to work on projects where you're like in charge of kind of your own project while being like mentored by a PI. And yeah, you have a little bit of freedom and like flexibility of like what topic you want to work on. You like write papers where hopefully you're like the first author on the paper, and yeah, you continue to do research where like you're the one kind of in charge of your own research project, if that makes sense. And the goal is to be like a temporary stepping stone towards the tenure track position usually. So I'll put this up here too, like uh, temporary stepping stone to tenure track position. Yeah, so if you're trying to go for this like tenure track professor down that path, this could be a good thing to do. I will say some possible downside is relatively low pay. Um, it's not. I don't think it's as bad as like the adjunct professor pay, but I'll say other than the adjunct, it's probably the lowest paid thing I'm going to mention on this list. Yeah, relatively low pay, relatively bad benefits in terms of like health benefits and that kind of thing. You don't get like, I don't think you usually get great. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you usually get like that great like benefits for these positions. And then the other thing is, I mean, well, like I said, it's temporary, so it's almost like you kind of have to start planning for your next move like while you're while you're doing the postdoc. You know what I mean? It's usually it'll be like a year contract or so, maybe 2 years, and then you can possibly renew it or possibly do like a different postdoc after you finish one of them. Um, yeah, so those are some downsides, but yeah, if you're going for like the tenure track route and you want to eventually be like a tenured professor, this could be like a good stepping stone to get to that point. Yeah, usually you can get some like a good publication or two out of it where you'll be like a first author on a publication. Continue to do cool research, continue to get like training on different topics. Yeah, so I mean, there's pros and cons to it. I decided not to do a postdoc, but it could be the right decision for some people. I'll say also it's like pretty easy to get. Um, yeah, they're not super. It's not super difficult to get a postdoc position. If you kind of ask around, just like email professors who are doing like cool work that you're interested in. A lot of times they'll have a postdoc opening, or they can like refer you to a similar lab that has a postdoc opening. Yeah, it's not like a super extremely competitive position to get, like the tenure track job or even some of these industry jobs I'm going to talk about. Yeah, the postdocs, it's like, yeah, it's not super difficult to like get one of these positions if that's what you want to do. Um, Yeah, and I'll just say to summarize this, like, might make sense if it's oops, cool research topic. Yeah, if you're trying to get like more training in the field and you want to just continue learning and continue doing cool research, yeah, postdoc could be a cool option. Yeah, it's like I said, you're not going to be getting paid that much, and it's kind of temporary for me. For me, the big downside was the temporariness of it. Um, I wanted to be able to settle into a position that could be kind of permanent. I didn't want to get a job and then be like immediately looking for another job. Yeah, I didn't want something temporary like that. I want something kind of more permanent. But yeah, there's some pros and cons. Could be the right decision for some people. Okay, so the next one in academia is staff scientist. And the first thing I'll say for this one is this is the one I ended up picking. So I ended up getting a staff scientist job. This was the path I decided to go down. So I'll say this is the one I picked. Yeah, I decided to become a like a staff bioinformatics scientist. I'm very happy with it so far. It's a really cool job. I'm really enjoying the research so far. Yeah, I recommend it. So the job of being a staff scientist basically means uh, you're basically working in someone else's lab or like working like for a university department. So you're not a PI, you're not like running your own lab like a tenure track professor, but you're like a permanent employee. It's a little bit similar to a postdoc, except it's not temporary. You're actually like a permanent employee, and you get like a salary and stuff. Um, and you just work on research like for a PI or for like a university department. So they kind of assign you things to do related to the research, and you work on it. And yeah, it's just like being an employee of a research lab, and it's very cool. I'm enjoying it so far. Yeah, I guess I'll make a couple more notes here. I'll say like similar to being a postdoc, except it's got higher pay, better benefits, and permanent. Or it's at least as permanent as things can be in academia. You could always get laid off or like you know you're funded by a grant and the grant runs out or something. So nothing's ever like 100% permanent, but it's not like a postdoc where you have like a 1 or 2 year contract. The staff scientist job is kind of indefinite, and you're an employee until the lab like runs out of money and has to do layoffs or something. You know what I mean? But it's not like a temporary contract. It's like you're actually like a permanent employee. Yeah, the pay is kind of medium. It's like more than a postdoc usually, but less than a tenure track professor. Also, for sure, less than like an industry position. Um, but yeah, so it's kind of medium pay. Yeah, I'm happy with the pay. No complaints about it. But yeah, it's not as high as like an industry position or something. And then yeah, the last thing I'll say about this is that like the staff scientist positions are actually like surprisingly easy to get. They're easier. It's easier to get these jobs than I would have expected. So I'll say surprisingly. Yeah, so I was actually surprised by this. Out of all of the different kinds of jobs I applied to, I think the staff scientist positions were like the easiest ones to actually like get an interview and then get offered the job. Actually, like basically all of the job offers I got, other than postdocs, were staff scientist positions. Actually, I'm not saying this to brag, but I'm just saying this to like let you guys know the current job market situation. But yeah, like almost every staff scientist position I applied to, almost all of them I like got offered the job. Which, and I know it sounds like bragging or whatever. I'm not saying it to brag, because I'll tell you guys like for the industry that definitely was not the case. Those jobs are like harder to get actually. But yeah, staff scientists. Yeah, like these ones at like universities and hospitals I applied to. Yeah, like almost everyone I applied to, they like offered me the job, and it was easy. It was easy to get. The interviews were easy. It wasn't some like super intense technical interview. It was like pretty easy interviews. They just chatted to me about like my research and stuff, and yeah, it was easy. I think there's like a high demand for these kinds of positions. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I would say yeah, this is the one I picked, and I do recommend checking out these kinds of positions. Okay, so before we get into the industry, there's like a little interlude here. Like I just have this note here: research hospitals, government agencies, etc. So this is kind of like this semi-academic, like not universities, but like kind of similar to academia, like this kind of career path. In between academia and industry. So these are like research hospitals, like government agencies, the NIH, yeah, things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of cool jobs here, and I'll just say for these, it's like similar positions to academia. Whoops, sorry guys. So you could be like a PI. It's kind of similar to being like a tenure track professor. Could be like a postdoc. Actually, yeah, there's one position I applied for is like a postdoc at like it was like at like a veterans hospital. They're doing some cool like psychology research actually. And yeah, they got like the staff scientist positions. Yeah, so it's kind of similar positions to academia. I will say though, less focus on teaching, which that could be like a plus or a minus for you depending on if you like teaching or not. But yeah, if you're a PI at like a government agency or something, or like the NIH or something, I don't think those people like do as much teaching classes as like a college professor. But I think other than the actual teaching, I think it's a little bit similar to being like a PI at a university. You kind of like mentor grad students and like run your own lab and apply for grants and things like that. But yeah, less focus on teaching. But other than that, kind of similar to academia. Um, yeah, similar pros and cons to academia too. Yeah, so that's all I really have to say about that. I think those could be worth checking out. Yeah, like research hospitals, government agencies. Yeah, you know, the NIH, like national laboratories, things like that. Yeah, it could be worth checking out. Okay, so the next one is the industry, and yeah, it's like I said, this is the big choice people talk about is academia versus industry. And if you're in like the bioinformatics computational biology field, there's kind of like two sub industry choices here. So you have pharma companies, and you have biotech startups, and there's kind of like a spectrum here of like bigger and smaller companies where you have some like really big pharma companies and some like very small like early startups, and there's kind of like a spectrum of like medium-sized companies too. But yeah, you can think about both of these here. They have like different pros and cons. But yeah, these pharma companies, this would be like yeah, stuff like GSK, Pfizer, Merck, you know, stuff like that, like Johnson and Johnson. Yeah, like the big companies like that. And then yeah, like biotech startups. Actually, I can't think of any particular ones. Um, but yeah, you know, like Silicon Valley. Like there's a lot of them in Boston. I'm just putting locations here. I don't know the names of the companies because they're kind of too small that they're like not famous yet. But yeah, there's a lot of them like Silicon Valley, like Boston. Yeah, like it's probably something like New York City. And I'll say like like these big companies and small companies have some things in common and some differences. So they have some kind of like similar pros and cons compared to academia. So I'll say like the pros for both of them compared to academia is like higher pay. Put like compared to academia, higher pay. Like working on so tangible research, like rather than abstract problems. So for some people, this might be like a pro or a con. I put it in the pro category for me. I think it's a cool thing these companies work on like actual like inventing actual drugs and like new medicines that will actually be used by people. I think that's a pro compared to like working on abstract problems in academia. Although you might feel differently. You might be someone who likes working on like the fundamental science problems, and the applied side is like less interesting to you. For me, it was kind of like I think the applied research and the translational research is pretty cool. But yeah, I guess that could be a pro or con. But yeah, they definitely work on more like applied like patient facing research more than most academic labs do. Um, some cons too. So cons, less freedom than academia. So what I mean by that is, whoops. What I mean by that is you don't have as much freedom to like pursue the research in whatever direction you want. If you're working in a company, like they're going to be like assigning you things to work on that are in line with like the goals that the company has in terms of producing whatever product they're trying to make, probably. So you don't have as much freedom as like a postdoc or a tenure track fresher or something like that to kind of like research whatever like you feel curious about. You're going to be getting assigned things to work on that kind of align with like the goals of the company. That's kind of a con compared to academia. And I'll say another con is you don't really publish as much. So this as far as I understand, like working at a company, they're more restrictive about what you'll be able to publish because a lot of it's going to be like a lot of the research is going to result in like proprietary data and like proprietary information that they won't be like super eager to like publish so that their competitors can get it. So this is a con if you care about like getting widespread credit for your work. If you're someone who's happy just like working on cool science and like knowing that it's going into like inventing a new medicine and you can know that you played a role in it and be happy with yourself, then you can probably be happy at a company. But if you're someone who likes to like announce a discovery to the world and like see your name on it, like see your name on a paper describing the discovery, that's something that's probably gonna be like more difficult to do at a company because yeah, I think they're more restrictive on like letting you publish the results. Yeah, so if you enjoy publishing and like writing papers and like kind of sharing the results of your research, I think that's harder to do at a company. Although maybe I'm wrong about that, but yeah, that's at least my understanding of it. So yeah, also with industry, surprisingly, whoops, surprisingly hard to get a job. Maybe this was just me. Yeah, it's like I said, how it sounded like I was like maybe bragging about getting offered all those like staff scientist jobs. With the industry jobs I applied for, it was pretty tough. Like most of them, almost all of them, never even got back to me about an interview. So out of all the ones I applied to a lot. I applied to a couple dozen like industry jobs, including like big companies as well as like biotech, like smaller biotech startups. Um, Basically, all the ones where I submitted a job application like didn't even get back to me for an interview. So that was how little progress I made on like trying to get an entry job. Is yeah, they did not even contact me back for an interview. The only exception was biotech startups where I didn't submit an application. I actually like emailed the CEO of the company or like emailed one of the executives at the company. That got me farther than like submitting applications. So maybe put this here too. Like, um, consider like emailing people at the company about jobs rather than just submitting an application on their website. Because yeah, all the like biotech startups actually like submitted an application to. Basically, none of them got back to me. Yeah, the only ones that interviewed me were ones where I actually like emailed someone at the company and like asked them for a job. So yeah, that could be the strategy with some of these smaller companies, I think. But yeah, I just put down here like surprisingly hard to get a job. This was the opposite of what I thought. I thought it would be harder to get a job in academia, and industry would be like the backup kind of. But yeah, getting these like staff scientist jobs in academia was like a lot easier than getting an industry job, and I'm not sure what the reason for that is. I think there's one little hypothesis I have. I'll just put it down here like hypothesis. And that's that I think that these industry jobs are not flexible when it comes to the timeline, and they want you to start right away. So that's just, I don't have any like concrete proof of that, but I'll put down here like hypothesis, like companies want you to start right away, not flexible with graduation timeline. Yeah, I guess I'll just put like, just to give context for this. When I was applying for jobs, it was basically about 1 year ago, and when I was applying for the jobs, I still had about 9 months left in my PhD program. So I was looking for a job, like I was looking for a job in advance, knowing that I wouldn't be able to start working for another like 9 months until after I complete the PhD. So yeah, I was looking for someone to like be flexible with me on the timeline. And yeah, like the staff scientist jobs at universities, they were willing to be flexible in like giving me like hiring me and then letting me start like later on, like several months later after I defended my dissertation. They were pretty flexible about that, and I wonder if maybe the reason I wasn't hearing back from the industry jobs is maybe because in my cover letters I was explaining my situation. I was explaining that I was still finishing up the PhD and would not be able to start working right away. I think with these industry jobs, they might want someone who can like start right away. So it might be difficult if you're looking for to like line up a job in advance while you're still finishing a PhD, for example. That might be kind of difficult. And in fact, I said that there was a couple of biotech jobs where I did actually like email them and get an interview. And those ones, I think the reason it didn't work out, like one of them they actually said is because they wanted someone who could start right away, and I couldn't start for another like 9 months. So that was the deal breaker for them. Anyway, that's an idea. I think academia, they kind of understand like the graduation timeline situation because they're universities themselves, so they kind of will work with you on that. But a lot of companies they want you to start working right away, so that's kind of what I think might be the reason behind that. Okay, so the last thing I have here is that besides thinking about like academia versus industry, and this kind of like middle ground for bioinformatics and computational biology jobs, I'll also say that if you're finishing up a degree in like bioinformatics or computational biology or like some other kind of like quantitative science field like that, there's a lot of room to like pivot to kind of related quantitative fields outside of biology. And this is something that I've heard of other people, like other students who were in my program. A lot of other people did something kind of like this, where they switched fields to something that was like another kind of like quantitative field, but not biology related. So I'll just put down here like many data science, machine learning, programming jobs to consider outside of biology. And I'll put some specific examples. There's like the traditional tech industry, and then like banking, finance. Those are kind of like the two big ones that I think are the most common like pivots to different fields from bioinformatics and computational biology. You can also go the other direction. So for me, I was actually I was kind of working in like the economics, like data science field, and then I pivoted away from that field into bioinformatics. And yeah, kind of switched in the opposite direction. But yeah, you can. I'll put here also like maybe like business analytics. That's another kind of common one. But yeah, these ones, if for example, let's say you're finishing up like a bioinformatics PhD with like a big focus on like machine learning or data science, there's going to be a lot of job openings that you're going to be qualified for that you might find interesting that have nothing to do with biology. So you may be interested in like working at like a non-biological tech company. Yeah, people also you hear some people going to work for like Wall Street, like quantitative finance, like trading type firms and stuff like that. That could be something interesting too. Yeah, like business analytics. I mean, yeah, if you guys just do a search for like data science jobs, if you're finishing up like a master's or like a PhD or even a bachelor's in like bioinformatics and doing like that kind of quantitative biological data analysis research, you're going to be qualified for basically any kind of data science job in a lot of other fields like outside of biology. So yeah, a lot of like banking jobs, banking finance. This was kind of what I had in my mind as being the backup because it's like I said, like me and my wife didn't want to move far away, so I was only looking for jobs in our geographic location where we were already living. And I had it in the back of my head that if I'm not able to get like a biology related job, like I'll be fine just getting a job at like a bank or something, something to pay the bills, doing some data science or like something like that at a bank. Yeah, that could be for me. That was like a backup. For someone else, it might be like their first choice. They might want to kind of pivot in that direction. But yeah, these days the banks have also a lot of like machine learning jobs too. Yeah, also like business analytics. Yeah, I guess just like all I'll say about this whole thing, switching fields, is um, if you're finishing up a program, doing research where you're like analyzing biological data, um, it'll be pretty easy for you to pivot into like kind of any kind of like data sciencey programming quantitative field if you want to. Yeah, you'll be in a good position to get a lot of other jobs like outside of biology if you decide to do that. Okay, so that's really all I had. Oh yeah, there's one thing I forgot about too. I told you guys in the beginning. I'll tell you guys like what kind of are the degree requirements for all of these positions. So yeah, like adjunct professor. It's one I'll put up here. It's like I'll just put like as far as I know, it like usually requires a master's or a PhD. Maybe not a PhD, but at least a master's. Like requires at least like masters usually. Which is a bit crazy because it's like I said, it doesn't pay very much, and it's not that good of a job for like paying the bills. But yeah, unfortunately, as far as I know, they are kind of strict about like the degree requirements. Yeah, I think like adjunct. Again, I've asked people not to do that, but probably requires at least a master's. Tenure track professor. This is gonna require a PhD. Typically, almost always, unless you have like a kind of like a special kind of scenario. Yeah, like almost always here. Um, may even require postdoc. Yeah, like realistically, it may even you may even have to do like a postdoc or even more than one postdoc to be like competitive for one of these positions. I think. Yeah, but that requires PhD. Postdoc, of course, it's in the name. It requires sorry, requires PhD. Staff scientist actually does not require a PhD. You do not need a PhD to be a staff scientist. It helps. It definitely helps. Kind of secure the job, I think. But yeah, like the jobs I was applying for, the staff scientist ones, it kind of said like PhD preferred, but some of them said like only a master's or even only a bachelor's was required. Um, so I'll just put like does not require PhD um, typically requires bachelor's or master's. Yeah, and this is another thing I like about it. Yeah, like the staff scientist, it's a little bit more focused on like if you can actually do the work they want you to do. So they're going to be looking for like your actual skill set. If you have like if you're like good at programming, if you kind of have the skills that they need in their lab. I would like it if they didn't even require a bachelor's. To be honest, I mean, I don't want this to become like a big like rant video or something, but yeah, I kind of like this thing about the traditional tech industry, like where it's very much like a meritocracy where if you're good enough at programming, you can get a job even without having a college degree. I think like biotech is not like that yet. Unfortunately, a lot of these jobs they do require some kind of degree and a lot of times even a PhD. But yeah, maybe one day it'll kind of maybe it'll slowly move in that direction. But yeah, we'll see. These ones I'll just put like similar requirements to academia. So if you want to be a PI, that's probably going to require a PhD. If you want to be a postdoc, it's probably going to require a PhD. If you want to be a staff scientist, probably not going to require a PhD. It might require like a bachelor's or master's. Yes, similar degree requirements depending on what job you're going for. Industry, it's really kind of a mix. Yes, really kind of a mix. Usually what you see on the actual job postings is usually they'll say like master's required, but PhD like kind of heavily preferred. So what I interpret this to be is that like they require you to have like a master's to even consider your application. But if you want to like really be competitive, it's going to be difficult to be competitive for these positions without having a PhD. At least for kind of the higher paid ones, the more senior positions. Maybe some of the like more junior positions it might be different. But yeah, these ones it's kind of difficult to get, I think, without having a PhD. And again, I'm hoping this trend will kind of that eventually this will not be the case, and it'll be more like regular tech companies where you can just like prove that you're a good programmer and like get a job through your skills. But yeah, at the moment, I think a lot of these companies, yeah, it's kind of difficult to get one of these positions without having a PhD, just because like most of the other applicants are going to have a PhD, I think. So with like the startups, they'll say like maybe more of meritocracy. Not sure. Compared to the big companies, I think they might be more flexible. I've seen a couple of these biotech startups starting to go in this direction, where they'll say like there's no actual requirements in terms of degree. You just have to be like a really good programmer and like pass like a technical interview. I've seen that on a couple job postings of like not having any official requirement, but yeah, I think it's not as much so as in like regular tech startups where if you're a good enough programmer, you can like not even have like a college degree and still get a job. I think it's not there yet. Switching fields, yeah, switching fields. This is the easiest in terms of degree requirements. Like to be a data scientist at like a bank or something, or like a traditional tech company, I think typically does not require a PhD. Like maybe like I'll put like PhD preferred, maybe. But probably bachelor's or master's good enough. Yeah, like the job postings I've seen for like banks and like a kind of other tech companies, for like similar kind of jobs, but just outside of biology, they tend to be more lenient in terms of having like official degree requirements, where they'll take you if you're a good enough programmer and you have like a bachelor's or something. that'll be fine. Or even if you maybe even don't even have a bachelor's, that'll be fine in a way that really isn't the case for like a pharma company, for example. Um, yeah. Okay, guys, that's really all I have for you for today. Again, that's just some advice. Just some advice coming from someone who was just like recently, possibly recently in your shoes, recently like navigating this job market. If anyone has any questions, let me know in the comments. If you want some more advice on any specific topics I didn't cover, yeah, just let me know in the comments. I'll try to answer them. Um, yeah, and thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.